just make a game about asking questions, and that's how we took it. At one point, I was contemplating on making a game about yellow text on blue background. Like, that's how literally loosely I took it, and I was helping a bunch of other people help out on making their games, such as, like, the way it was presented to us is it was a video. The theme was a video that says, "Hey, everyone, all together now, say the following words. What do we do now?" Right? So I said, "Hey, how about making a game where everyone has to work synchronously together and somehow presenting a bigger picture of it, just like the way we did it for the theme presentation." I mean, it has nothing to do with the word "what do we do now," but that was how the theme was presented to us, so it's still based off of the theme. So that was kind of like the kind of ideas that I was helping. Nobody took that one specifically, but there was a guy that's like, that got me thinking. I think I can make a game out of this. So, when you hear the theme, don't take it too seriously.
It's interesting to mention one more thing went right with ours. We actually had somebody. Are we streaming? We are on?
Yeah, we're on.
Okay. So okay, good. So somebody, one of the kids who played our game actually said, "Wait, what do we do now?" To get them to say, and they're like, "Oh wait, that's the theme, awesome!" Nice. Like, it was like really interesting we were going for that. We wanted people to actually stop. The way our mechanic worked in the game, you couldn't move apart from each other because you would die for too long without planning out your moves to complete the level. So it was actually on purpose designed in that we wanted people to stop, wait a second, and not play and be like and think, "What do we do now?" Which I think worked really well. Which somebody actually said it, like actually said the theme. Player go, like, yes. So that was a really pretty awesome feeling.
Was there any other positives to note?
Yeah, so two things I can think of for mine is, first of all, I played off a wall of strengths I know I have, because pretty much every game jam, I always kind of do the same sort of thing where I completely lone wolf, like I don't join a team, and I always make multiple games per game jam. So this year, I kind of half did that because I still worked on music for Astra's game, but then I also just super last minute crapped out a random game, and also I have a lot of improv theater experience, and I think this game utilized a lot of that because it's very improv-y. So that was some strengths there. And then the other kind of more jokey answer I have is if you're doing a comedy game like I did, writing all of the comedy bits at like 4 a.m. when you're delirious from sleep is a wonderful way to generate really weird ideas. In particular, I was going to kind of play off of, in particular, when I was designing my cards, I was crashing at Terrence's apartment along with his factory reset team. So we were all kind of feeding off of each other's energy, even though we were like staying up stupid late at like 4 or 5 a.m, still working on our games. Like, our energy of all working together kind of like kept us awake, and gave me feedback. I could bounce my really weird ideas off of. Like, I was reading off some of the possible combinations that came up as I was writing them, and people were like, "Oh my god, that's horrifying!" Or like, we're all laughing. I definitely remember when I wrote the card that just says poop, I had like a 4-minute just breakdown of laughing myself, and they didn't have any idea why.
Did we say I get a bonus to staying up late the more people are around me?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't work. As soon as you guys left, I was like,
ooh. Yeah. Like, as soon as Darren left, like, I heard you go to bed almost immediately. He passed out.
So do try that at home.
So just hang out with people. If you want to do a game jam, you can't do it alone. Nope. Even if you are making a game solo.
I'm making a game solo. We're still surrounded by people feeding off of their energy of ridiculousness of.
Give me your energy.
So can we move on to the next subject?
Yeah.
Okay. So what needs improvement? What were some problems that you've encountered that you realize that this we could have done better? I know you guys had a long conversation to talk about this.
So I'm going to read from the Oculus VR best practices document.
Dramatic reading. Just the whole page.
Subjecting the user to any change of perspective or zooming in and out the camera can induce exacerbated simulator sickness.
That's not something you want to exacerbate.
So
remember everyone, just for context, he made a drunk simulator.
That's hilarious. Did you read that before?
No. Well, an hour before it submitted, James was like, there's like best practices and stuff. Because I was doing a lot of the testing, and
Getting sick? Yeah.
on Saturday I just felt just out of it, just completely, just like, oh my god, I hate my
Drunk?
life.
Well, it worked, and it worked.
No, I didn't feel drunk. I just felt sick.
Hungover.
Yeah, that's the thing is like I didn't want to test your game on the
I
Oculus
know
because
I got sick. I know
playing
it.
normal games in the Oculus makes me sick.
Yeah.
So like as soon as I saw that was what your game was, all like I will play the non-Oculus version.
I still got kind of nauseous playing that.
Yeah.
Which is
I did want to test the game, but invariably you would come up and ask like right after I'd eaten.
Not
right now,
a giant
maybe.
burrito, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically I'd never made a game in Oculus before, so I didn't. I've used the Oculus, but I'd never made a game with it. So when you test stuff, you do it all the time, and I basically used that thing for like 2 hours straight. So I was messed up for like 48 hours. I still feel a little weird right now.
I'm feeling weird talking about it.
So that's bad.
Changed you.
So that's bad.
So don't troll your players or yourself and make it a
I mean,
drunk simulation.
I mean, it could have worked if we just kept the camera in the head, but instead we attached the camera to the hips, and
no.
the character naturally bobs and weaves.
I think it's brilliant. I think it works great. For what it is, I think it's genius.
Drew, you had a horror story to talk about.
Yeah, see, the problem is I can't say it's partially my fault. Yeah, a lot of our team, by a lot, I said half of our team got really, really sick at about Saturday night.
Game's cursed.
To the point where both the people, me and Josh, who were on site, did not make it back to Sunday, and there was actually no one there to present the game. And the game really wasn't ended up being finished. So I guess the important thing is if you're going into a game jam, you know what's coming up, make sure not to be pushing yourself too much the week before. Sometimes can't be avoided, which is the case for us. Both of us were working on a project in our day jobs that was trying to finish, and we were late nights every day. So we went to the game jam, and then we're doing late nights every day. I think our immune system's just crapped out. The other thing that needed improvement was we went in with the idea of practicing using a new language none of us had used before, which is Hacks, which is a cool system for exporting to a bunch of different platforms. So that was a good idea. That was the goal. The problem was that we didn't really have any planning beyond let's use Hacks to make a game like Tamagotchi.
Oh, gosh.
And since with the previous mentioned thing of we only had Google Hangouts, we had some planning discussion, but that type of thing is much better when everyone is actually in person, and so we never really got a really solid design down, which meant that throughout the rest of the weekend when we were working, we got stuff done, but there was no real clear goal for any one of what we were going to. The artists were pumping out great assets the whole time, we were getting features in, but we had no idea how it was just kind of organically evolving, and that's not an optimal way to run a project.
By the way,
real quick, I wanted to mention the people outside who haven't participated in Global Game Jam. Feel free to ask any questions with us. We're trying to keep track. Oh, also, if there's any questions on the chat system as well, let me know, Jamie.
Yeah, we'll do.
Okay, so yeah. Any sort of disaster stories that we should share? So in our location at MagFest, I heard that there was a similar problem in SUNY as well. The internet was not very accessible in the sense that they didn't. The Gaylord was the hotel's name. The Gaylord Hotel did not provide us with any Wi-Fi, so all they did was give us this gigantic switchboard on Saturday afternoon. It was all sorts of horrible. Fortunately, we were making a card game, so we were on the much more lucky side where one person just had to be taking notes. But one thing that now I know what to do when I add into my presentation, write down the notes, expect no internet.
Yeah, that's sorry I just went, but that's something that encountered us a lot too. Because half of our team wasn't actually present, the internet that we were using was a guest account at a university thing, all in one place, so that got overloaded. And
different rooms, and you all seem to have better.
I was fine. I had no problem with
it. But the lab room,
it's funny.
The lab room, the room that you expect to be the best, was the worst, and then the random classrooms were the best, but it would be problematic because we were trying to set up our development environments and downloading software. Right, that's another thing. Don't have your software that you're trying to use first. We were downloading it at the jam, and we had cases where the internet would drop out mid-download, which would then corrupt the file, which meant you had to clean out and then restart. So, yes, that is another thing that needs improvement. Have your entire development set up set before you go to a game jam.
Everyone else heard that outside?
I suppose the only potential snag with that is if you're going to work with strangers and you don't know
What
kind of
project
what
you're
different
making.
people's skills are.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you install the stuff that you
Install
know you're
every
good
game
with,
engine.
then at least you'll have that.
Every game engine.
Who's up?
Just put them all. Yeah, that's right.
So that's all the horror stories.
No, I got a horror story.
yes.
Oh, you got it.
So Astra hasn't gone.
Yeah.
Astra had some to rant about, I'm sure.
Oh yeah,
What
that's cool. Okay, so first off, like what I'm just gonna echo what Drew said. Get your whatever software that you need ready. The problem that I had was that we tried to start with Construct 2, which probably might have been a much better idea. Seriously. So, and then we ended up brainstorming with like Game Maker because we want to export to whatever. We settled with Stencil, which is a bad idea because it crashed. It corrupted the files. It didn't want to play music, unfortunately, and it forced the programmers, the two programmers that I had, which were pretty good. They had to redo everything like 75% of the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So that's like
Sorry.
And you had
Yeah.
version control to help you during
that
the
did.
time.
We didn't have version.
Okay,
But
so
we said- we did say-
there's our insurance right there.
The thing is, they saved multiple copies, but the multiple copies didn't get to be read by Stencil. I don't know why. They tried it on two different computers, one Windows and one Mac.
It's just
It's a
So you had to
nightmare.
restart
It is a
halfway
nightmare.
through?
So we basically restarted like
Ugh.
3 hours before the submission.
Oh, really?
Yes.
You got a lot done then.
We
That's
got a lot
incredible.
done the day before. We could have made a pretty good vertical slice with most of the things intact, if not for Stencil.
Ouch.
So don't use stencil. Moral of the story.
Probably not. Probably not.
Never use stencil.
So we just don't
Yeah,
really do it.
I have no idea.
that
what's
definitely is an improvement.
Does it have any redeeming qualities?
It's
Is it
drag
free?
and drop.
Is it free?
It's free.
And drag and
Yeah,
drop?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so there you go. But don't use it, right?
Construct 2 is free. as
Free
well.
drag and
Yeah,
drag
yeah,
and drop.
Game
Construct 2 is awesome.
Maybe Game Salad. I don't know.
I've never used Game Salad.
Game Salad was actually recommended at our site as well.
Right. I see a lot of people using Game Salad.
Construct
on
did, I
the,
think, do most
It was
of it.
actually the first thing that was
Yeah.
recommended
I
the
love
moment
Construct.
this guy asked,
I'm using.
"Do you need programming?" And he's like, "No, just use Game Salad."
Yeah, I know.
This
So-
Game Salad was not free though, is it?
Game Salad is
It's
free
free.
to publish onto web, I believe.
Oh,
Yeah,
neat.
you gotta pay if you want.
Yes.
phone
Right,
access.
right. Okay, cool.
We had some horror stories. I don't know if we can compete with that, but
I can. I sure,
they,
no,
they
no.
pretty much all of our horror stories revolved around me and things that I did. The way that it usually goes. So like I said, we blazed through our design pretty quick. I don't think there was a lot of confusion around that, which was awesome. We had various people coding various bits, but other people hadn't really used Construct on the team, apart from myself, too extensively. So I was the main person kind of doing coding within Construct, with the exception of a couple of features. Like Matt contributed some really important features as well. And
Which I was helping a lot.
so that was cool. We did have some initial like learning time. We had initial like download the software and get everybody the software time. However, so I mentioned I feel like I'm quite good at organization, but I'm terrible at time management, which Taro has noted is the number one skill that you need to have for a game jam. So as a kind of person who's
Don't be Jamie.
that basically be a tip. That's a general life tip. It applies to game jams as well. So I correctly identified ahead of time when we had our initial discussion what are the features that are going to be the riskiest to implement. So yeah, here's a couple other tips. Like, don't try to make a game where you do collision against cursive writing.
Sounds
That's
like
a
a
bad
good.
idea.
That's a great. No, it's a great idea.
Yeah,
It's not a good idea during a game
It's a
jam.
great thing to dream about.
Right.
So
I think it's awesome.
I had kind of hoped, I hadn't really checked ahead of time as I should have, that Construct 2 would be able to do per pixel collision, which was my initial thought for how to do this. Turns out Construct 2 does not support per pixel collision, and I had a very sinking feeling when I read the forum post from the creator saying that, as they claim that JavaScript is too slow to do per pixel collision, which is
Multimedia
it almost
Fusion
certainly
does
is.
that.
Well,
Does it really?
It does, yeah.
I don't think we used that either though. We did.
Well,
use
you
that.
did.
Yeah, you use
Not per
Mortem.
pixel though.
So
I think we just had a box.
Yeah.
what that led to was, so again, in our game, you have this quill pen and you're trying to trace this over this cursive writing. So we had to, more specifically, Anthony had to manually go in for all the levels and set up waypoints that followed.
Is that how you did it?
Yeah.
That's why there's a if you saw the little blue
Yeah,
dot
yeah,
there.
yeah.
So, and the Construct 2 interface for doing that is not the most convenient. You can only see one waypoint at a time. So, like, if you want to check where the previous one was and put the next one in a reasonable location, you have to, like, click on the previous one. Okay, that's where it is. Create the new. It's very cumbersome. So, yeah, Ant is...
How long does that take?
I feel like
48
I'm
hours?
giving- I
48
feel like I'm
hours?
giving you kind of Vietnam flashbacks. At
Well, it wasn't so bad.
we ended up doing, just
He
2
avoided
levels.
napalm.
And the 2 levels were really good, but I feel like we could have done more if it had been a less cumbersome creation process. But
I'd like to do it more precise. Actually, I didn't do it very.
Well, you had a difficult
He
tool to
wants
work
more.
with.
He wants more right now.
Maybe he's into that torture or something.
Oh, there's also
Sounds-
time constraints, right?
Yeah, time constraints too.
so the only other kind of thing that I felt was fairly disastrous that again had to do with me was I mentioned we kind of jammed together these 2 ideas, one from Ant, one from Matt. However, I put my own spin on them as I'm wont to do, and my spin on them was I was trying to imagine who would be writing back and forth with a quill pen, because we had to write text for these letters, and we hadn't really figured out what does the text consist of, and I just got something stuck in my head about a Ken Burns Civil War documentary, because the first thing I thought of old timey letters, and all I could think of was the Ken Burns with the dramatic music, Dear Mother.
Yeah.
So I really got fixated on that idea for a while, and when we came down to do the writing, none of us know anything about history, so it was a cool idea and everything. But if we had some just Civil War letters that we could have stolen or whatever for the prototype, would have been cool. But we went down to write it, and we're we have no idea how to write this, so we ended up just moving on from that idea. But there were a couple things like that we got fixated on. The implementation of the tracing took a really long time. I eventually arrived at a much simpler way to do it, not aside from the waypoints, but the actual checking against the waypoints. I was doing a very complex mathematical collision check of finding the nearest point on the line segments. People will laugh at me. I say it's complex. It's complex for me, being not very good at math.
Well, I don't.
Eventually, I found a better way to do
you're
that.
talking about.
I discovered the better way, on the last day, basically, and that negated a lot of the previous work that I'd done. It's if I had thought of this earlier, I could have saved a lot of time. The only other thing that took up time was I was also a volunteer, and I was trying to help other teams. So pretty much the whole first day, I was kind of hopping around, and that was really great for me. Again, that was part of my goal for the jam, was just to be able to help out newcomers. But we had one team. I spent a lot of time helping them in Construct. I learned a lot of things about Construct, which was great. They wanted to do a spotlight thing, and I had no idea how to do it.
Did that work?
Yeah, it worked. So I figured out with
Did I help at all?
yeah, it was really helpful. So they left the first night, and they had their spotlight mechanic going. I was really excited for them. I was they're going to be good for the next 2 days, and then I don't think they came back.
Maybe they just finished
I
the
saw
game.
them at the end, but they didn't end up showing their game, so I was a little bit disappointed. I really wanted to see kind of how it turned out. But anyway, so yeah, that was the many things that went wrong with me specifically.
I have exactly one horror story, and it's nowhere near as bad as all of
I
you.
should save mine for last.
Yeah.
That's just a
That's
cake.
fine.
I think make the game
Basically-
over again. I think it's the worst.
Yeah, the makeover one has to be
But I
the
got-
worst I've heard. I mentioned that in MagFest at around 3 o'clock that we had a bunch of MagFesters coming down and playtesting it. I think it was around 5. There was one particular MagFester who came to our booth and who playtested our game. And after playing it, he just kind of had this big frown on his face. And then for about an hour or two, lectured on us on what we should make our game, how we should make our game. And he was absolutely intense.
Jimmy, you went to that.
And by the way, we listened to the entire thing instead of bullying him out because he actually had some really excellent points with our game, especially in regards to exploits and what is considered a win condition in our game, whether that was too powerful or not. But his whole entire conversation was so long.
Wasted your time.
so intense, and like I feel like we could have spent a lot more time doing other things. I also, there's the fact that right after that I took my pillow and it said I'm out and just kind of dropped down and took a nap.
We had somebody, the playtester game, we said no. We were so busy implementing stuff, we're like, no, wait a second, give us like an hour.
Yeah, so
this didn't have time to let anybody use the machines.
There was just this one guy who was so it took us just so much of our time, and oh gosh, it's Vietnam flashback all over again.
So my horror story, use the tools you know is a good advice usually.
Oh yeah.
I did use the tools I knew. I know Photoshop inside out. However, that said, do not, under any circumstances, ever try and animate a sprite in Photoshop. It's just not. It's not good. It took.
What do you recommend?
I don't know. I have to learn something else because I don't know much anything else to do. I'm learning Flash a little bit. Yeah, it would be much better and cleaner. But something the way about Photoshop, I know how to animate in Photoshop is the thing. It's wonky. It's super wonky. Like the way it works. Like it's layers based on frames, but based on layers. It's like back and forth. So if you change one thing about a frame, it changes the layers and vice versa. It's really strange. You have to have it all set up. Basically, you have to know how it's going to look and what you want it to do exactly before you go in. There's like very, very difficult to go back and tweak something.
This is giving me a GIMP Vietnam flash.
Yeah, it's not as bad as that. So it's like you can't change anything, or else you have to pretty much start over every time you want to animate, like to make one change. It's really, really frustrating. And so what's weird is something else happened that I couldn't tell you, because the first time I did the animations in the first night, they worked perfectly. I'm like, oh great, this is going to work perfectly for the whole time. I'll be done with these by 3 p.m. tomorrow, and we all set with our animations, and I can move on. Awesome. Nope. That didn't happen. It took what I thought took. I scoped for about 3-4 hours. Took 8 or 9, which was a day. So just to get those done. Oh my god, got them done finally, and then everything else was exact. I mean, it was after that. It was just background assets, so there was nothing as far as our side goes. Photoshop was great for that, and I flew through everything else and ended up doing honestly, also make time for exporting assets. Yeah. That's a big thing you forget about. Is I could blaze through making an entire asset sheet in a couple hours, a few hours, and but you have to save them and send them out individually. You have to actually get those in the game, and that takes. It took 2 hours just to get everything in it, just to extract everything. Which is interesting.
I've mentioned in my presentation that you need to at least allocate 1 hour for exporting, and obviously this applies for artists as well. So I'm happy to hear that was.
Yeah, no, I mean we did. We again
cross-platform suggestion.
It was pretty intense getting everything done, but we got it. So.
Any other horror stories or things that you think was like a minor thing that, despite being a minor thing, you thought could have been improved?
Well, two things for me.
Things about me that were horrifying.
two things for my game. One, the whole reason I did a card game was I actually was planning initially on doing a very simple game in Construct 2, but I ran into technical issues and couldn't actually get the not multiplayer, but networked feature I needed running on my phone or anyone else's phone.
That was a really good idea too.
So yeah, I was like, well, if I'm not able to test the geolocation features, I don't know how to make this game. I don't know how to make a game I can't test. So that was an issue. But speaking of that moves perfectly along to the other issue, which was even with my card game, I actually ended up having to submit it to the website without it ever being play tested by anyone, including me. So that was a bit nerve-wracking because I'm like, well, people are going to see these rules that I'm like, boop, I don't know.
It worked great.
Yeah, so
I think it worked wonderfully.
I was kind of just purely trusting my instincts as a game designer for the past 5 whatever years. I don't even know how many years I've been doing game design now. That I was just like, I think just from what I know about game design, this should all work.
And it did. So good job.
Yeah. Right. So, but that was still very nerve-wracking for me, and I was not happy with myself as a game designer for releasing something I had never tested.
I had a very similar experience where, towards the end of the day, we were talking about putting together a random rule generator, and me being the actually good programmer that can make stuff in a very short amount of time, spent 5 hours doing that while the other guys were changing the rules of the game entirely.
Oh.
And fortunately, I didn't go too far before I said, okay, what are the rules now? And they said, this is how you play the game. And I said, all right, my framework needs a little rework.
work.
Yeah. Good that you found that out early.
Yeah, we definitely got hung up on particular features that end up being dead ends beyond the ones I mentioned. Like we wanted the inkwell in our game to be like a physics object, and the pen so you could knock over and spill the ink. And we spent quite a while trying to implement that, and then kind of had to just abandon that aspect of it, which we've since added in. If you go play the game now, at the time we just couldn't sort it out. We had to just give up.
All right, ready to move on to the next topic?
Sure. What's the next topic? Hit.
Do you plan on attending another game jam after this?
Never. If I do, I'm making a board game.
Can I flip the
something?
table?
No, I'm kidding. Everyone should go to them. They're awesome. They feel amazing. I for one, absolutely, I could go to everyone I can. I love them. They're super fun. They make you make a game. There's no excuse not to go. Also, the biggest thing for me, and the reason I do them is not just for fun and friendship and so on, but realistically, it's portfolio work, and it's really, really high quality. Well, hopefully high quality. But it's portfolio work. It shows that you can work on a team. It shows you can finish something, especially if you scope correctly. You have something to show for it when you're done. Mm-hmm. It's really, really, really rewarding to know that.
It's an incentive to kind of crank out.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I've never made that much art in that amount of time ever.
Yeah,
48 hours.
Deadlines are really good about making you work harder.
Yeah. Well, especially that deadline when you're surrounded by other people who have the same deadline and who you're competing. Well, not competing, but like who you're making games parallel to, and it's it's 48 hours. You got 2 days.
Yeah.
It's like it's go or do or die, and it's really, really fun. Like it's a you don't have time to like. Let's go to some lunch. Nope. Bring lunch to us.
It's a two potentially very, I guess, encouraging or motivating moments. Yeah. Encouraging is wrong. Motivating. Yeah. More accurately, one is when you get like your first playable, first version of your game that feels like a thing. If you ever get there.
Yeah. Hopefully you do. Hopefully you do.
The other one is like the first time you see other people's games around you, and like, oh no.
It's like, whoa, we gotta do stuff. Yeah. So that's. And I think a couple of years, I know, in my past, I was looking at a lot of. I was learning back then though, but I know I was looking more at other people's games and focusing on ours and just like, ooh, that's cool, and not wasting time and like. But yeah, it definitely go into another one. Absolutely go into another one.
Yeah, well, this conveniently leads up to the next topic.
Wait,
so, what would you plan to do differently?
Did everybody else want to go to the next game?
I was going to say something.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I skipped you over on that.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. My favorite part about the game jams is. During work, I do programming. I make games, but there's a bunch of things like they're long-term projects, and so you have to follow a bunch of specific stuff to make sure that it's stable and you're actually selling it. So it has to meet certain guidelines, and there's meetings to make sure you're meeting the guidelines. And when you're in a game jam,
it's all good.
A lot of the times the game is like. The goal is done at the end of the weekend, and so all this other stuff that's like designed to support a long-term project is not there. The only thing that matters is it done? Is it playable? Does it work? And so the amount that you can get done in such a short period of time, it's like I can actually do stuff. It's really cool.
The red tape.
You have like a really a large amount of autonomy during those. Events especially because it's such a small team as well.
Yeah, it's just really cool because sometimes you're like, it took me all week to get this thing done. That shouldn't have taken me all week, and then you're in game jam like, oh, I finished a game, and that was
2 days.
Yeah, 2 days. It's really
if I can
cool.
speak for Darren, he's not here, but he was on my team. He loves them and he encourages people, especially he's in the industry. He works. Yeah. A lot of you guys are too, but it's the only time he can work on something original.
Yep,
because he's not allowed to work on his own project normally because of where he works and stuff. So IP, whatever, all that stuff. So he loves it because he's able to make something. Yep. And it's for this nonprofit, non-compete. It's not like anyone's selling it. It's not, it's just this little thing he does on the side, so he gets to actually enjoy making his own stuff for once, which is really a nice break for a lot of people. Like you were saying, there's no red tape. No red tape. Do whatever you want. Just go for it, which is really cool.
I mean, the most exciting part of the project, even if you're not working at kind of a studio that has, very rigid structure, even just as an indie developer, the most exciting part of the project is always the beginning. Like when you first thought it up, you're really into the idea. And then at least for me, don't want to speak for anybody else, but that invariably tapers off over time. The more I'm have my head down day by day, implementing, eventually I just don't want to look at the thing anymore. So thankfully a game jam, you don't have time to get to that point really. So you're stressed out, you're freaking out, but you're still usually you don't really have time to get bored with the idea.
You always see the potential of the idea, even to the end. So
Yeah. In my case, definitely yes. I have been to every single one of the global game jams since they've started, with sort of the exception of one year where I still showed up for that first Friday night and tried to cram as much of a game design as I could into that night, but I didn't get anything done. And then the rest of that whole weekend, I had like a prior engagement that I had to do, so that was unfortunate. So I've basically been to every one of the global game jams. So yes, I would clearly recommend it and would keep going to all of them. On my end, kind of echoing what Terrence just said about Darren's thing, is I particularly like to, get to explore new weird ideas, and that's why, like, even though I'm jamming entirely by myself, why I still get a lot of enjoyment out of it is just like, I like having that theme, that you're just like, all right, I need to come up with some sort of weird idea about that. Maybe that's the part of me that used to do a lot of improv. I just like trying to play off of a weird constraint like that. And there was something else I was going to say, and it's not coming to me anymore. Oh, sorry, that was another thing too, is the studio that I work for and Drew works for actually as well, we actually have somewhat regular, at least like once a year, game jams in our studio as well, and we're encouraged to participate in all that, and our boss has everyone in the company do these global, not global game jams, I guess, just game jams in that case.
Local game jams.
Yeah, very local, like company-wide game jams, because it's nice to be able to very quickly see and get an entire game done. Like it very much breaks up your pace, for like kind of what Drew was saying as well, of when you're working on a very long-term project, it's hard to like see the whole process, and when it's all crammed into one weekend, you can kind of get through all the stages, because just in general, working on a game, there's different phases of game development, and some are more enjoyable to some people than others. I kind of have waffled between all of them. Like at the end of the project, when you're just killing bugs, it's very exciting because you're getting a lot of stuff done. It's very task driven, but at the beginning, it's a lot of fun because you get to brainstorm weird ideas.
It's that middle, though.
Yeah,
that middle.
Right, there's kind of the middle where it's like transition between the two.
That's what I'm cracking out assets. It's right in the middle.
And so Game Jam gets you all of those crammed into a very short amount of time, so you get to experience it all as one giant horrible cannonball.
That's what we should have done on the round table, is say what we do.
Yeah.
I hope people understand. I'm an artist. I don't program.
I'm a game designer.
There we go.
I'm not really much of a programmer.
I'm a programmer. I made a card game.
Program that card game.
all the above.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I do some programming now, so I guess that's fine.
Cool. So let's.
All right. So what was your next question? What was the next question that we totally ignored?
Actually, no, I completely rewrote it. So,
perfect.
Twitch, if you've seen it, yes, I completely changed it. Changed the question because I realized how
Game Jam.
it was not something that.
Oh, that's right. I meant to.
Anyways, if so, what do you recommend for beginners who also plans on attending the next game jam?
I got this one. I'm gonna take this one. Well, I got a bunch of things for this, but one, just anything goes wrong, just Game Jam. That's all you guys. Just say Game Jam. That's it. Yeah. Because it's gonna happen. There's gonna be a million things that go wrong, and don't get frustrated. Just do it and keep going.
I mean, you heard all of our horror stories.
Yeah, it happens.
It only
every
happened. It only happened in 48 hours, and that is a lot of stress that, frankly, is actually a lot more tolerable than it sounds like.
I think really one of the best things, though, and this goes for in general, is just keep the scope down.
Yep.
Because we were able to make extra levels. It still put a lot of stress on us, but just make sure overscoping is that's it.
I think another thing that you have to assess too is you have to reassess the scope. Like with our game, we realized that we can't get hands working.
Right.
Do you need hands in your game?
Yeah, you did it first.
They didn't need it, but it was part of the original design.
Right.
I see.
So I mean, after day 2, we kind of just said, okay, well, we got to make a game out of this. Let's put this, and that in there, and polish up these specific areas.
I think that's another piece of that too. Is get something together that's finished, whether it's or working, like whether it's exactly like you had it in the beginning is kind of irrelevant as long as you have something. It's never going to be the same either. So that don't.
Well,
don't worry
any
about
game
that.
that you come up with in your head is never like it
exactly.
is in real life.
Except for mine, I'm working on now. But
It's the biggest trap.
it is. It really is.
development.
So far, I'm sure it'll change.
I would say, we're doing recommendations for beginners?
Yes.
Step back for a second. Okay, this is one that was inspired by kind of Keith's game and a couple others. And it's definitely arguable, but I would say for beginners, try to pick a game idea that, like, if it fails and all falls apart, it'll still kind of be funny. Like, it'll be almost improving the idea. Like the Keith the Drunk Simulator, and it's like a game where it's like the more broken it is, the more it's kind of doing what the title says, So, and I just think like we had done Ludum Dare or Ludum Dare, whatever you want to call it, here recently, and we did a game called Laundry Day, which is like we'll do a laundry simulator. It's like, nobody's necessarily that. It's not like their dream idea, so it's not like a tragedy if it falls apart. But it's just like here's a goofy thing that like everybody can just kind of like riff on, I guess, and contribute ideas. And again, like if you go for something that's a little bit more tongue in cheek.
Make
Sometimes
people
like
smile.
that.
That's
Yeah.
like
Right.
that.
Just
our game turned out to be a little more serious than they.
Yeah, no, I didn't smile at all.
That's heavy.
It was pretty heavy. It was cool. It was kind of nice. I liked the atmosphere to it.
Yeah.
I really did. Like, but it was a little more somber than most.
Yeah.
You know,
So
I like
try to build in little fail safes like that, and if you're gonna fail, like fail funny.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, that's
And
the
you'll
best.
still fail.
Yeah. Say everything you did was on purpose. Every feature, no matter what.
So don't make the "you're gonna cry" the game that you pitched.
That could
I
be.
pitched the exact opposite of that.
Oh yeah, that's right. What do we do now? Sad game.
I pitched a game about funeral planning, the death of a loved one.
That could also fail funny if you handle that correctly.
We're just gonna,
Sorry, Grandpa.
we combined drunk simulator.
Yes.
Oh no!
Yeah, just walking.
And he's writing
Drunk
a letter.
Mortition,
Drunk
2015.
Drunk writing a letter to your loved one, who's telling them about their rent.
Kids, the dog has died. How to prepare for grandma's passing.
Right, and then you have your letter you have to write to grandma, and we can buy all the
Right,
games.
crossover. Just mix up.
Jam
games together.
them together.
Use
I
our
think
design.
some advice I'd have too is it's what you have to think what you want to get out of the jam as well. A lot of advice that we've been given is for if you want to make a successful game that you want to show that's a playable game. I want to put this in because our project was a little different. Our goal was actually to learn something as well, which is a great place for the game jam as well, is to get to learn how to use something you've never done before. Yeah. For beginners, that's implying probably whatever you set out to do, you're going to learn from. So it can be important to think too of actually searching out a project or something that there's like you pick one specific thing that you want to learn or improve, and then if you can find a game or project that works with that, that can be great because like a failsafe, even if the game doesn't work out the way you intended, you still got something out of it.
Yeah.
Which is a big thing for me. I did a lot of game jams up at the RPI, a local college, and in the beginning, I was all about like getting like the prizes, and then it was just I realized after a couple times, and I just I got it down to a science, and it was just like I'm running this, but I'm not really getting much out of it, and it was like so I kind of changed focus and went to trying to learn stuff. So that's another way you can kind of approach a jam is find a specific thing. Like I will learn how to use Game Maker, or it can even be I want to learn this how to do this specific part of Game Maker.
The game that I ran into technical difficulties on was me attempting to learn how to use the geolocation features in Concert 2, which it turns out didn't work at all for me. So I had to very quickly abandon that idea.
I mentioned in the presentation earlier that your two main goals when you're going to a game jam is to have fun and then to learn something.
Yeah.
So I obviously completely agree with that. I'm a programmer, and yet when the main recommendation I make for the beginners is don't be scared about programming for Game Jam because it's no longer important. It really is no longer necessary to actually program or to make a digital game. And for that matter, I mean, I said I'm a programmer and I made a card game. Those are completely in the options as well. I also recommend for actually technical people that's thinking like, oh, I'm going to make a Call of Duty game or anything like that, to actually try to attempt making either a card game or a board game. It's a completely different experience.
You learn stuff,
being able to use that, I personally consider like board game is the most minimalistic version of video games. It takes away all the cruft of lore and that kind of stuff and winds it down to a single mechanical version of it. And it was a wonderful, wonderful learning experience for me to make a card game and figure out, okay, we have this core functionality, but it is actually incredibly difficult to make it into something that is fun and actually engaging. So,
but you still naturally tried to program something.
Well, we did. Well, we ended up
a keyboard.
The thing about the programming. Okay, so really quick, though, the original set of rules in our game was that you had 3 secret rules. But we quickly found out that when we were trying to make the game that we had a hard time coming up with these rules, and every once in a while it would end up conflicting with each other, and we had these moments of, So what do we do now? So the whole programming the rule generator was actually supposed to be to prevent that from happening, to give them one, inspirations, and two, generate non-conflicting rules. So besides the point, but I mean, there's no longer anything to be scared of when you're approaching a game jam. The worst you're going to meet is these horror stories that we talked about. That a large majority of them had almost nothing to do with programming or was easily avoidable using a different tool.
So I just want one more thing. You find a team. If you're a beginner, find a team that's experienced. I mean, ask around, and they're, I'm sure, going to be glad to help, and they're going to be glad to have your help with whatever you can do.
Well, yeah, definitely coordinate with the organizers because they know what they're doing. They will help you.
Get on a team with people with experience. You'll learn a ton.
There are people with experience who are willing to do that. Like there are definitely people who go and their team, they work with the same people and stuff, and they like to work together. But there's other people who.
Well, we always include, me and Darren try to always include new people because we know what we're doing. So
you had a mix of people.
Yeah. And it's really fun. Also, don't be Jamie.
If you're gonna hook up with somebody who's
no, Jamie can go.
Make sure it's not me.
I'm just saying, don't be you again.
Well, don't be me. I mean, that's step one. Step two is don't work with me.
So associate with you at all.
One of the other things I would like to mention, kind of playing off of what Taro said too, is game jams are also a good opportunity to kind of push yourself into a different set of, mindset, I guess. So, I mean, Taro's a programmer, but he ended up making a card game. I know for a lot of the game jams I do, I'm a game designer professionally, but I also like making music, and I don't really get to do that as part of my job very often. So, for game jams, I like doing audio stuff, just because it's a different change of pace from what I normally do, the normal game development stuff I do. So that's why I was doing music for Astra's game.
You did a great job, by the way.
Thank you. But yeah, so that's another twist you could take on your interpretation of how you want to do a game jam as well.
Yeah, do a different job role.
Yeah, try. If you have never tried programming before, try programming. Or if you have never tried doing art for a game, do art. Just see if that's your thing. And
that's right. I actually put art in the game for once. I actually did the actual implementation of the assets, which I'd never done before, which is cool. So
there was one team in our MagFest team where one of the there was, I think, mostly girl team, but one of them said she's a 3D artist, she doesn't know any programming, and this was the first jam where she actually tried learning it, and they actually made an absolutely wonderful game called Arena. So check it out. It's on the MagFest Global Game Jam website. We'll be showing off the
Can we show some of the Twitchers or games? Is there a way to do that?
Today is not going to be the day. That's going to be
right, that's right. Okay,
during showcase.
Gotcha.
Cool. So
what's next?
Any other suggestions from other people? All right, so this is finally the time for other people to shine here that hasn't attended the Global Game Jam. Other suggestions or questions that you guys might have about us in regards to how we experience this and so forth? Yes?
My question is, because when I was in college, I ended up being a sort of debugger / tester on my team.
Awesome.
We were, as part of one of our projects, we were making a Java version of the board game Risk.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to develop code just to test out code, to test failure states. And something you're saying basically the stuff you're doing was either untested or potentially break. Like how important is either writing code that can be tested, testing with your code, or is it just basically keep throwing stuff together and see if it works?
I'd like to speak to that because I have experience here.
Yeah.
If you have the number of members in your team that you can afford to have someone do that, it is amazing. The 1 year that I had done, and I got a game in Global Game Jam that had won, we actually had 7 people on our team, and one person's job was just to play the game and he was also a programmer, program some systems just to test, and it ended up finding some bugs and some problems that we were able to use. But the problem is, in most type of teams that you're going to find in a Global Game Jam, you are so pressed for people that it is really tough to have someone be able to just dedicate it on that. Like, you're struggling so much to get the game done that unless you have a large enough team, you might not have the throughput to be able to do that.
Another great place for beginners to start.
Yep.
Is to be a tester. Go on the team and just say, I'll test your game, I'll play your game, I'll help. And then you can teach them as they're doing that to program little things in if they to fix a feature or something, how to do that. I wish we had that on our team. That was would have been extremely helpful because, like I said before, we actually had to tell people, no, we can't have you test our game. We love you, sorry, but we have to use all our machines. We had to be using them constantly to put stuff in, so we couldn't actually have time to oh yeah, here, play it. Like, nope, sorry, we're gonna take that from you, and we're gonna keep coding. So that's if you're the beginner, and it's extremely important is to answer the question. It'd be awesome if you can do it.
I agree with everyone, but with the whole caveat of if possible, and in my experience, it has been incredibly rare that has been the case. Unfortunately, testing tends to be of a lower priority because all you care about is trying to get something done within 48 hours, and quite frankly, testing is just one of those things. I mean, quite frankly, towards the end of the jam, nobody's expecting a solid, bugless game at all. So those kind of, it's kind of easy to sweep those under the floor. That said, any experience I had in regards to being able to have, a tester in our game jam, to be like, for example, myself. I tend to be very anal about making sure bugs aren't there and that kind of stuff. It has been by and far a godsend to have that kind of resource, to have that person just solely focused on testing and making sure that the game works as expected.
I think as well, there's a distinction between bug testing and play testing.
Yeah,
right. Play testing, like, is this actually fun? There's bug testing, how broken is it?
Yeah.
And I think play testing, like Taro, you made a really good presentation about just advice for global game jam, and the key advice that you gave, and that I've heard a lot of people give, which I agree with, is like get a playable prototype up as early as possible and try to verify whether or not it's fun. And I think at that stage, certainly, if not sooner, than having just more people feeding back, like, where you can decide, like, is this even worth pursuing?
Fun or whatever you're designing.
Yeah.
Fun, whatever you're
so,
going for.
So there's that aspect where obviously it's still going to be buggy at that stage, and probably throughout the entirety of the jam, but like just more feedback from different people. You still have to obviously keep that within a condensed amount of time and kind of move on.
It's also one of the best rewarding things is to see people playing it and smile and love it. That's the greatest thing.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, it works.
It'll even give you a motivation boost. Or,
totally. If you're feeling crappy, let someone play it and then let them laugh or smile and then yes.
I think a thing to note too, is specifically with the idea of programming for bug testing being especially hard for Game Jam, is since the pace is so fast and features in the game will change itself. If you're going from the more traditional that like automated testing side, it can be really like impossible to keep up. Your test maybe testing a condition that's no longer relevant to the game half an hour later, which is why again if you're going in that role, it's going to be more of the play tester debugger instead of just a standardized like auto tester type thing. That's
even with like a human tester, I found as I mentioned, like time management is not a skill of mine, and anxiety management isn't either. This was actually my third.
We actually had some pretty
game
jam.
It's only the third game jam that I've ever done, and I avoided them for a really long time. Apart from the capacity of coming in as like a judge at the end when everyone's too tired to argue and just saying like good, bad, whatever. That was fun. Like the actual idea of trying to get something done that I would be reasonably satisfied with in that amount of time. Like, it really scared me off for a long time. And I found, like, I still get quite anxious. This was actually my best one for it. And playtesting.
You anxious? No,
I mean, that's me in general. But
that's what I mean.
But the game jam does exacerbate that, to go back to that wonderful term. I found that one thing, like, I did have random people wandering by when we were working on Pen Pals, and they would, like, comment. Like, we weren't specifically looking for
Well, you were in a good spot, yeah.
I was, like, in the middle of trying to implement something that I know is broken, and people are kind of commenting on it. And I think, like, had we had, like, a dedicated tester who was telling me that the whole time, like, this thing's broken, it's like, I know, like, then that probably would have, like, ramped up my anxiety just as
we hid in the corner.
That was smart. We had people come by, they would kind of say things that were innocuous to them, or they were tired too, but to me, because I was tired and freaking out, like, somebody came by and was like, so what is supposed to be the point? Like, just that kind of thing. I was like,
is this even a game?
Yeah,
what do we do now? Well, Jamie beat you up.
Like, why are you even bothering doing this with your life? It's like,
that was someone's question?
No, like, that was just, my interpretation of it. I don't know. I don't know.
So, any other questions from other people?
Well, one last point I would like to make about that one is for those of you listening who are entirely new to programming, you've never really programmed anything before. One thing that is super useful though is at least while you're initially programming things in the first place, adding little cheat codes for you to quickly get to the part of the game you're trying to test.
Yes.
In particular, that's going to be useful during a game jam where time constraints are so tight that you can't afford to keep playing the whole game each time. You need to have level skip codes and stuff like that.
Certain tools allow you just to pick
Unity.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So
scenes, right? Exactly. Yeah.
So I would say to that level you should have debug things set up, but those are really minor. It's not like a whole auto test system or something. So yeah.
Any other
Great
questions?
advice.
No. I have a question for you guys. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was also wondering, after you're done with these, it sounds like they're not really done. You can keep working on them.
Oh yeah, you're
Yeah.
absolutely.
Have any of these game jams resulted in a bigger game that ended up successful?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, very much
Ours
so. Not anyone of ours, as far as I know.
There are
But-
people at Global Game Jam last year. I think didn't Ian work on a game that ended up getting released? Isn't that it was Fade or something?
Oh yeah, that was not last year. It was a couple years ago now. But yeah, that's
Oh,
right.
You
One of our
Well, he did art
Albany,
for it.
yeah, one of our Albany Gem sites
Yeah.
did eventually go on to become actually released on the App Store.
So
iPad game.
what is a Surgeon
so-
Simulator? Was it a big one?
So
Yeah,
Surgeon
it's probably the
Simulator
biggest-
2013
it's probably the biggest one.
is
Yeah.
the biggest one. The other big ones I
pretty
can
hilarious
name
game.
are Mirror Moon is a big one. Thomas Was Alone was from Ludum Dare, but nonetheless
Was that
a
a
big
Game
one.
Jam game?
Yeah,
I
it was a
didn't know
Game Jam
that. That's
game.
awesome.
That was a Ludum Dare game.
That's cool.
Blocks.
Mike Bithell was cool. I talked
And
about
what else? There was one more. Oh yeah, I was just talking to
Here
them at. MagFest. Shutshimi. I'm not going to be able to pronounce this
These guys?
correctly. Which is supposed to. No, it's the sashimi game. That one was also made in a game jam as well. This is actually a good jumping point to talk about the licensing in Global Game Jam. Everything in Global Game Jam is supposed to be under the Creative Commons Creative Commons share alike attribution license, which long story short means and non-commercial. I forgot about that. 4.0, which is supposed to mean that for other people who are using the game, they do recommend that you show the source code and that kind of stuff. You're not allowed to take that game and remix it, call it your own, and sell it. So nobody else is allowed to do that. That's why they put that licensing in. However, the Game Jam explicitly states that you yourself, the people who made the project, do have the rights to continue making it into a commercial version. So just to let you guys know, although your games might be licensed under Creative Commons non-commercial agreement, you guys who made the game are completely allowed to make a commercial into a big one as well.
So long as it doesn't compete with other things you might be doing.
Right.
Just something.
I think another thing to note is that even if the games directly may not go, there's probably countless unrecordable examples of someone experimenting with a concept or
They got
idea
it, yeah.
in there that then goes and is used in something big. So even if the direct game itself, it's that has happened.
And connect
I mean,
with
Tower of
people-
Goo later
Yeah.
became World of Goo, so
Yeah,
it was
right.
technically a different game, but the initial groundwork was laid in
Yep.
Tower of Goo.
Actually, it is technically fine to copy off of other games, like clones, basically, so long as you're making your own artwork and source code. So that's where the limitation of that license ends. But yeah, just to let you guys know, that's that.
Cool.
Any other questions? I have one question for you guys.
For us?
One problem that I usually have when dealing with a team is propagating work. Normally, when you're doing normally when you're working in a team, both commercially and professionally, in other words, and in a game jam, you want to make sure that everyone actually has work to do. Anyone who doesn't have work to do is typically ends up being very demoralized, and that also brings the whole team down. So I wanted to ask you guys if you had any strategy on delegating your work and making sure that everyone's keeping busy.
I do Lone Wolf game jams.
I was gonna say, my teams are always
I
small,
win.
So
Yeah, so I guess for us, I kind of just went around to the guys and saw if they were making progress. Basically, at first, James was struggling with Oculus, so we gave that to Josh real quick to see if he could work on it. We kind of moved tasks around a little bit, just to make sure nobody, like if they were banging their head against the wall, it's like, okay, well, bang your head against this wall instead.
right.
But that's kind of, that was my strategy, was trying to just see what everybody was working on.
Right, makes sense.
Yeah, trying to get everyone's ideas in is really important. And Jake, you said checking in, asking them what's going on instead of just. It can get frustrating and stuff, but yeah, I think it's more frustrating when you don't feel like you're part of the team.
Right.
That can be really sad.
Yeah, that's
and stuff.
incredibly frustrating, and I can speak that from experience.
Yeah, I saw a few teams like just at the Albany site where they were there the first day and they sort of fell apart, and it seemed to be due to that. It's just like couldn't quite gel as a team, where there was one person who kind of splintered off, and
it felt bad.
You always feel bad when that happens.
I had that for my last day because I was a designer and
you just left your team. And
well, no, I didn't leave my team.
I'm kidding.
Because I was done with my art asset. I was the artist and the designer. Also the director for the whole game. So I was basically done with the art asset, and the programmers were basically mulling over the crashed stencils. I was just there looking at them, feeling kind of really sad because I couldn't help. It's like I couldn't do anything. It's basically them mowing through.
Oh, that must have been.
Yeah, I know. I was miserable.
You could just give them cookies.
And I kept popping and being like, "Hey, how's your game going?" Oh, that's
that would be a bad idea. That would be bad.
I'm for music. Oh, your game's exploding. Well, bye.
See you later, guys.
It can be really tough in the frantic pace of a game to do any form of, as you mentioned before, you don't get to have like dedicated testing. It'd be really hard to have sometimes a dedicated producer,
manager.
Which does bring a suggestion is, even in a small team, it's often a good idea, it depends on your work group, to have somebody who you kind of agree on is going to be someone to go to for that, just to help with some like clashing.
Trello board.
Yeah,
I
was still kind of as like producer role.
A helpful thing that I've just picked up is if you have some type of version control that you can take a peek at who's been putting stuff up. If you have seen people who there's nothing in their name for a very long time and you're working on a team, you don't necessarily have to ask them. You can be like a Snoopy manager guy and just look and see what they're doing. And if they're not working on anything, obviously they might there's two options. One of them, they're out of work and they're too shy or whatever to ask. The other one is that they're slacking. If they're slacking, we can't worry about them because you're not going to be able to have them help. Why are you at a jam? Whatever. The other option is you can just go through and if you know what needs to be done, pick something that you know is open. Maybe it's on the Trello board. Maybe they didn't see it. Or if there's something you think the game could need, one of the smaller things, maybe some audio or some type of specific feature that maybe they're stuck on something, you can give them one of those small tasks or smaller tasks to go take care of, because no matter what skill set you have, you'll be able to complete it, and then they'll complete a task and come back and maybe they'll be more motivated to go tackle something else. That's what I've encountered. In one of the games we had someone who didn't have any program experience, no art experience. Basically, he was a biology student who just decided to stop by for the stuff.
He's awesome.
It's really cool. But
cool.
He had that problem of all of us had game experience before, and we were all diving, and he just kept struggling. He was just kind of hanging around. So we actually had him go and say, you know what, we need some sound effects.
Perfect.
Go get the sound, and then for the rest of the time, he was actually able to contribute stuff, and
that feels really good.
And it feels really good because he got to contribute, and he was doing something the whole time, and it was something he could actually factor for. But if we didn't actually pay attention to see that nothing was happening, then that would have just kind of slid off.
That's one of the ones.
That's a really good point. You really do need to be quite vigilant about that.
Yeah.
I know, like I was acting as kind of like producer-y role for our team. And I definitely have like different kind of brain modes that I go into, and like I'll go into programmer mode. And there were certain things I said, like there were things I knew were going to be the most kind of intensive to implement.
Yep.
And I did front load them, but that put me in my programmer kind of mindset really early. And that mindset is like block out all outside distractions. And so I wasn't checking in as often as like I should have been early on. And then eventually, people got hung up on particular tasks. Like eventually I would notice, and then we would kind of resolve it. Just like it was easy enough to resolve, but like. You can get trapped in a mindset, I think particularly as a programmer, or just me personally, like where you think like it's more productive for me now to just get this thing done. Like this thing needs to get done, it's like the core feature or whatever. But actually it is more productive to like peel off that time, to like help another person get them unstuck. Because if it's just you, like you'll get your one feature done, but everybody else is blocked in the meantime. And you're just, if you're making progress in parallel, like you'll end up with a much better thing, and everybody will end up much happier in the end. Yeah.
I was going to quickly mention that if, one, I recommend using a task manager like Trello, but two,
especially in game jams, you can't expect one person to always be capable of taking a manager position. So you actually do have to be self-seeking on the kind of task that there is. And this goes back to the whole have a task manager suggestion, because if you all start with these are the set of tasks that needs to be taken care of, and somebody's not working on a task, then if you're that person who just happens to have a lot more time suddenly, if you can, I would go through the Trello board. Well, I would go through the Trello board itself, look for a task, make sure you talk to everyone else, and make sure they're not working on it, and say like, can I start working on this, and then get started working on that. I hate to say it, there should be a manager position for any kind of these events, but it's incredibly difficult to get somebody who's actually good at that.
Yeah.
And not only good at that, but good at that in that really tiny time frame.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to be very self-motivated and secret tasks yourself.
Yeah,
sometimes.
I think it was helpful that Danielle came around and asked, like, who's the leader? And I was like, oh, me, fine, I'll take it. And then just felt like I had the responsibility of making sure that things were moving along. So.
Yeah. So I mean that's the terrible way of solving that problem, but it's just one method that I know absolutely works. You have to be self-motivated to do things. Now, for the people who aren't self-motivated, well, I shouldn't say self-motivated, who aren't used to being in that mindset, then be aware as soon as possible, as Jamie mentioned, as soon as you have time to devote to other people, I would actually spend the time and see where everybody is.
The only potential pitfall I think of having like the task manager or the Trello board, at least for me, was like, well, we have all the tasks, we talked about them, we listed them out, so like everybody should be fine, basically. But like that's not everybody. Again, like everybody's not coming from the same position you are. Like I've been making lots of games, I'm used to like a certain rhythm. But then, as I said, like my goal was to work with people who like
Don't
have never
do
made
that,
a game before. So just because the thing says like, oh, implement this thing in construct, is like, bah. It's like you can't.
What does that mean? Yeah.
So it's tempting to
that end, though, there are.
self-check,
This is what I was trying to say. The cool thing about games, and one of the reasons I was able to pitch them doing a games class at my other job, after school program and stuff for kids, is my boss was like, well, I mean, that's really cool. We want to do that. We want to get people to do it. But, is that going to be... I mean, are the girls all smart enough to, are they all at the same level? And I said, well, that's what I said. I said, yes, there's always something to do in a game. You could have somebody writing. You could have somebody doing audio. You can have somebody doing artwork. You can have somebody doing programming. You can have somebody doing... what was the next thing?
Testing.
Testing. You could... Exactly. There's so much... You could have people drawing on paper. You can photograph it and scan it in or whatever you want to do. Like, there's no... Like you said, your guy got audio.
Yeah.
There's always something to do on a game. They can do voice acting or sound effects.
Writing.
They can make them themselves. Like, for kids, especially, or for anybody who's any experience level, like, there's no limit to what needs to be done in a game. You don't have to... Just, I mean, the high-end stuff, like, or the more... I don't want to say high-end, but, like, the more, like, specialized tasks of, like, actual asset art or for programming and stuff. Sure, like those things need to be done by people who know a little. If you want like a finished thing or whatever, by people who know what they're doing. But everything else, like I had our other third party member getting textures for me for my stuff. Just because that takes time, because it takes time for them to go on Google and for me to go on Google and look and find something and send it, get in there when he could just send it to me, big email, done. I've got it, and it's like it's just and that he felt he contributed because he did. I mean, he was programming too, but
yeah.
That's the thing. Like, there's always something to do.
There's certain tasks as well that are kind of like that are like they're low skill barrier as far as like being able to do it, but they're time intensive
and they need to be done. Exactly. Yeah. Or the same thing with he was the one helping. I gave him all my stuff on the flash drive. Like I just dumped everything, and he was the one who started putting it in to the game. Like just getting it in, and that was a huge time help because I didn't have to like. I didn't have to deal with that, so it was just like I could just keep drawing, and so that's exactly like and. It is fun because it's like then they get in the mode of like, oh, I'm gonna get this thing. It's like it's a whole thing. So it's cool. But yeah, there's always room for people. So that don't worry that if somebody can't program or whatever, just always like I said, try and help them find something for them. There's something I know there's something you can do.
There's always something.
Exactly. So
any other questions or suggestions that you guys might have? All right, if we're good with that, it's 8:35 right now. I actually brought up the quick website for the Albany IGD at SUNY Games. It's under globalgamejam.org/2015/jam-sites.
Albany IGDA SUNY /
Wow.
So it's quite a long list there.
Or just Google Albany IGD.
Yeah, you can. There's a search
You
bar
can
on
just-
the top
yeah,
at
just-
Global Game
It
Channel.
finds it if you
can
just pull Albany.
Yeah, you can just type in Albany, and the first one actually that came up said 2014. So screw you for being a little screwed up on your search bar. You get 2015 up there as your first
I was just
instead.
right up with 20.
Well, it just happened.
Anyway, so here we go. We have
Get on
Drunk
top.
Simulator, Factory Reset, Genesis, Memory for Camgi, Pen Pals, Tentacle Pump. I heard that was amazing.
Yeah.
Wayward. What are we going to do now? What do we do now? And what do we draw now? I personally went to MagFest. This is on. So this one, if you search on MagFest, the 2015 will actually show up because this is the only time the two are going to coincide, as far as I can tell. We have Don't Crash and Burn. ... Because zombies ... Chroma Jenny. Cognizant. Control Seek. I will be bringing this up in a showcase. It's absolutely brilliant. Don't Breathe. Enter the Grid. Fragments of Mortality. Global Crisis. Impossible Poker. Law and Order.
That's an awesome title.
Law and Order. Pug Dumplings. Space Mongols. Star Fox 64. Stuck Inside, and Arena.
Wait,
So
Star
go
Fox
check these-
64, really?
Star Fox
Oh,
64. Oh no, it's that game is actually really good. I had it. It needs 4 Xbox 360 controllers,
Ours needs 2.
and each player it's 8 players, and each player uses 1 control stick to control a flock of these weird hyper wireframe manta rays.
Wow.
So 2 people per controller?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see.
It's
neat.
really confusing, but it's kind of all sorts of brilliance. So as you can tell, we went all puntastic with this game jam. Anyways, check those sites out.
I'm a
and
fan of my
we'll
title.
be out in
I
a few
will say that
minutes.
forever.
So
Good title.
It's Albany, New York, by the way.
Not Georgia. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Albany, New York.
Or Oregon or wherever else. Albany.
There's Georgia and Oregon. I think Georgia's the big one.
But
anyways, we'll see you
we
next
are
time.
Albany, New
See
York.
ya.
Bye, TVGS.